Indian cricket's two biggest guns in action today in the tournament. Rohit Sharma's Mumbai Indians take on Virat Kohli's the Royal Challengers Bangalore. First game in Dubai for the defending champions. They come up against an RCB side that managed a victory on their opening day, and then a lot of the old RCB came up on the next one. Will that trigger wholesale changes? If you're following our ball-by-ball commentary, you know that it has. Should make for a very interesting pre-match conversation on Whirlpool Presents ESPN Cricket 4 T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. In the very fine company of Ian Bishop, we've given Sanjay Manjrekar a day off after that graveyard joke on Sharjah that he kept repeating. And we've got a very, very astute Deep Das Gupta joining Ian Bishop from the same hotel in Abu Dhabi. So Deep, welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I guess same floor as well, if I'm not wrong.
Really? The two of you should be in one room doing this. We've already seen Danny Morrison show up. I mean, you could save yourselves. Anyway, never mind. Stick to your own screens. Let's talk about the game itself. Bish, news coming in from Dubai. Mumbai Indians will be bowling first for the first time this season. They batted first in both those previous encounters, lost to Chennai and beat Kolkata. And they've come to Dubai for their first game and stuck with the trend. They'd like to chase. Thoughts on that?
First of all, it must be challenging for the captains because previously you had captains making a certain decision in trying to chase and then it's not working out. You had David Warner then sort of looking to set a total and then try to defend it. And then that didn't work out. And then we went to Sharjah last night in the Saucer Bowl and we had a record run chase. So captains must be thinking, goodness gracious, what do I do? Which ground are we at? How do we do things? But all in all, I think Mumbai will come into this game thinking to themselves, it doesn't guarantee us anything, but we have been firing on more cylinders than the RCB unit. So very confident team. And again, it doesn't guarantee them anything.
Yeah, fair enough. On the other hand, Deep, can you say Mumbai is one of those teams that prefer knowing their targets? I know a lot of teams do, but we always tend to think Pollard, Pandya, utilized properly, not utilized. When they're chasing, do things become a lot clearer for a team like Mumbai?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at that setup, one is the batting lineup that you mentioned. The other important thing is also the fast bowlers, I guess. And Dubai, the dew factor, I know in Abu Dhabi, we don't really have too much of that dew factor that's affecting the games. But Dubai, because it's an enclosed stadium, there would be some amount of dew factor involved in this. And also the bowling attack, as I mentioned, they're like three top fast bowlers that they have. And I'm sure they want to use that pitch when it's fresh.
Right, let's talk about team news because it's going to be a long conversation for Royal Challengers Bangalore at least. Mumbai Indians, if you're following our ball-by-ball comms, you're following the live coverage on Star Sports in India, you know that they've got that one player back that we thought would start this season. This is pretty much the predictable Mumbai 11 now. Ishan Kishan gets his first game of 2020 and Saurabh Tiwari's, Rohit Sharma's would say, isn't fit. So here comes Ishan Kishan, who's been so good for Mumbai whenever he's had limited opportunity. Otherwise, it's the same team that beat the Knight Riders in their last game. Quick comment on that one. Ishan Kishan comes in deep. He would resume Mumbai's best 11.
I mean, initially I thought in the first game itself, I thought he would be there in the playing 11. But anyways, I mean, he's there now. And as you mentioned a while ago, I mean, if you look at that batting order, there are quite a few guys who can float, who are flexible in their batting order. So it's going to be Rohit Sharma, Quinton de Kock, Surya, I believe, at 3. And then I think rest of them would be floating around based on the situation.
You know, Bish, in these early days of the tournament, there aren't too many teams that we can pinpoint and say, yeah, we know their best 11. They're still figuring it out, chopping and changing. Mumbai, on the other hand, with the way Pattinson's gone in 2 games, you've almost got that now. You're like, okay, this is the best 11 that Mumbai are going to have. You get that feeling?
I believe they're closer to understanding what their combinations are. The one area I would say that they are weak is that in the spin bowling area, their options are not as plentiful as one of other teams. And I look at Krunal Pandya's numbers. It doesn't look as though he's been at his high point of excellence so far in 2020. So there's a little bit of a question mark there. But from a batting perspective, the cock, Rohit Suryakumar was brilliant last game. And I also thought Ishan would have started the season. It didn't work out. Saurabh Tiwari took his chance. So one thing I'd like to ask Deep is what does Ishan Kishan as a fellow southpaw along with Saurabh Tiwari, what's the difference? What does each one of those players bring?
Deep?
I think Ishan for me brings a little more than Saurav Tiwari in terms of he's more flexible in his batting order. You can actually open with him. Obviously, it's not required at this point in time, but he's more flexible in the batting order. Saurav Tiwari is kind of predominantly a number 4, number 5 batsman, middle order or even maybe low middle order. But Ishan, I think, gives you more as a batsman in terms of flexibility, and also, power hitting wise, I'm going to stick my neck out and say Ishan is a more completer. I wouldn't say complete, but completer player as compared to Saurav. Saurav, where his hitting zones are, his hitting areas are. It's easy comparatively for a bowler to stay away from the arc. But I think Ishan is more versatile in terms of hitting as well.
Right. I'll tell you one more thing that Ishan Kishan does offer is an extra keeping option, which Virat Kohli wouldn't have minded in his team. Because we have no idea who's going to keep for RCB today. That's a conversation we'll figure out at halftime. Simon Catted said pre-season that perhaps AB de Villiers is an option with the gloves. They've dropped Josh Philippe as we look at the RCB team, and they've brought in Isuru Udana. They've brought in Adam Zampa. So while Bish points out that Mumbai don't have the reserves in wrist spin bowling, RCB are playing 2 leggies in their 11 today. The other hand, the other changes include Gurkiratman in for Umesh Yadav. So there comes a batter for Umesh Yadav. You've got Isuru Udana for Steyn and Adam Zampa for Josh Philippe. It's anyone's guess who's going to take the gloves, whether it'll be AB or one of the Indian players that's going to make what is now a likely makeshift keeper option for this game. Let's leave the keeper conversation aside till we know more. Let's talk about the Isuru Udana one. Bish, we spoke about it in our preview as well. They clearly want to try different things now, something different for their death bowling woes, and they're playing the only Sri Lankan in the IPL for that. Thoughts?
Yeah, the first time I saw Isuru Udana was in England in the 2009, I think, T20 World Cup, and he bowls a great slow ball. He overdid it then. He was left out of the team for a couple of years, and he's found his way back into the belonging of international cricket. So I'm curious to see what he brings at the end of the innings. Does he bring a Yorker along with those slower deliveries? But he is a specialist type of bowler at those stages of the innings outside of the IPL. So I think that's a good move. Whether he can back it up, time will tell. But they needed someone to come in and give them that death bowling option to go along with Navdeep Saini.
Yeah, this is interesting, Deep. You thought Steyn and Umesh were both bowlers they could go with the new ball. Now both of them find themselves out, and you've got 2 wrist spinners. So how would you balance this bowling attack? What's the look of it? It's a completely transformed bowling attack now.
True. Suddenly from 2 new ball bowlers to now 2 death bowlers. And now when I look at that side, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, quite a few bowlers overs from the spinners there. We might see Washington Sundar starting the bowling again, bowling in the first 6. We might see Chahal bowling over there as well. Because as Vish was mentioning, Isuru and Saini, both of them will bowl an over at least in the first 6, but they're predominantly death ball bowlers and specialists there. So I see a lot of, few overs from the spinners in the first 6.
2 wrist spinners worked against them in the last game against Punjab at Dubai. Bish, is that tempted Virat Kohli in playing 2 leg spinners of his own?
Yeah, I think he'd look more at the numbers against Mumbai rather than what worked against RCB. I think that's what all the wise captains would do. And I think before we started the show, you talked about, was it Zampa against Rohit Sharma? I think, and you talked about the fact that he's gotten him twice in 9 occasions or something like that. You'll clarify those numbers for me. And there was some research that we did before Mumbai's last game, which talked about spin and showed us the numbers of spin slowing down someone like a Quinton de Kock and 1 or 2 others in that middle over segment. So I want to see how that plays out, because Rohit and Suryakumar Yadav, who is an excellent player of spin, got into the slow bowling of KKR quite early in the piece last time. So I'm fascinated to see how this plays out.
Yeah, just to confirm those numbers, Gaurav Sundaraman's on top of all of this, Deep, isn't he? 9 balls, 2 wickets, and 2 runs. Adam Zampa to Rohit Sharma in T20s. He was the leading wicket taker in the ODI series that preceded this for Australia and England. So Adam Zampa comes in with a little bit of cricket behind him. But now that you've got 2 leg spinners, it should be interesting how you go, Deep. You've said that there's a good chance that we might see more spin in the power play this time.
Yeah, I mean, and they have bowlers who are comfortable bowling in the power play. So once that, secondly, also if you have to, I mean, if there are these three venues here in UAE, I think the stickiest is the Dubai venue. It's that's how it has been so far in this season. And also, I mean, if you look at the batting order, the MI batting lineup, I mean, I won't say apart from Rohit when he's set and Surya, I won't say the others are very comfortable against the leggies, especially. And that's apart from having quality spinners in their squad. The other issue that I foresee is when the pitch starts turning, do they have enough batsmen to handle the spinners? There are big hitters out there. I mean, Pollard and Hardik and Krunal, they are big hitters, but they if the ball is sticking a bit and it's turning a bit, can they rotate the strike? Can they, can they maneuver the spinners as well as some of the other squads? So that's going to be interesting. I mean, 3 spinners, 2 leggy and Washington. This is going to be an interesting contest.
Yep, yeah, it's a conversation for the second innings, though, now that Mumbai are going to be bowling first. And if you are a fan of matchups in the IPL, especially some that you don't expect and then they develop as a pattern season after season, one of those is Krunal Pandya against AB de Villiers. Now, it doesn't make sense on paper, but it works year after year for Mumbai against RCB. Krunal has a very good record against AB de Villiers. Not too many bowlers can claim that. Bish made an excellent point already, observing that the spin reserves of Mumbai are questionable, and one of those has been Krunal Pandya's perceived lack of form as a bowler, lack of impact at least as a bowler. So let's explore that. Let's first try and make sense of this. We know that in some ways it becomes a bit of a talking point, Deep, when a Krunal Pandya keeps getting AB out. What about Krunal Pandya, the bowler, at times can deceive batsmen? How would you rate him as a bowler? And what about Bish's comments on, and it is a general trend now that he has seen his impact as a bowler seems to have reduced.
No, let's be honest. I mean, he's a batsman who can bowl. He's not a proper bowler. He's not a bowler who will give you consistently 4 overs every game. But so that's the biggest challenge I think for someone like Rohit is how do you get most out of Krunal the bowler? Because on his day, I mean, he's a very smart bowler. I mean, he might not have all the variations as an orthodox left arm spinner would, but he's extremely smart. He uses the crease really well. And I think one of the reasons for me, I think he's been so good against someone like AB de Villiers is because he keeps AB de Villiers kind of looking for options. I mean, he's kind of has got into his mind or under his skin, so to say, and has been successful in doing so in the past. But again, you've got to be a little careful. You can't really go into a game knowing that you're going to get 4 overs from him.
Yeah, that's the other thing, Vish, with Hardik Pandya. Question marks on whether Hardik Pandya is still a bowling option. We saw after the first game that Rohit did want overs out of Kieron Pollard, and it says something that he still went into that first game expecting 4 overs from Krunal Pandya, bowls him at tough situations, that he rates him highly, wants to put him in pressure situations. At times, does the temperament of a bowler give you more importance than the actual skill that he may have?
For sure. One of the things, and Deep wasn't privy to our discussions last night, and I was discussing it with a couple of friends today. Ravi Bishnoi, apart from Ravi Bishnoi's skill, Ravi Bishnoi shows me that he has great character, which is perhaps a higher percentage of his makeup. And so I want that in every team. And if Krunal Pandya can give me that, and every time you walk past him on the ground, he's near Kieron Pollard, so to his Hardik, they seem like brothers in arms. It tells you something is rubbing off between them, and that Krunal Pandya seems to have that something that the captain can respect about him. Cricket isn't only about how you play when things are going well, but how you manage yourself and still contribute to the team, even when there's a slight dip in your form. So I do hope that Krunal Pandya is able to get back to his best this season.
Sanjay Manjrekar keeps making that point, Deep. He has to specialize in that one skill set. Now, there was a time where Krunal got more batting opportunities, went up higher, I think, before Surya Kumar Yadav returned to Mumbai Indians. And at that time, you could see, his batting, which you said is his primary skill, was being used. Now he plays that role where more often than not, he's going to have very few balls to play. He's not got much to do with the bat. then does the bowling come more under the spotlight? He's had an India call-up and he's found his way out of the team and all this in this time. So are you forced to change what your primary skill is, looking at what opportunities you're actually getting?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the advantage that someone like Krunal has. I mean, it's not that he can't give you 4 overs. It's just that he can be at times more expensive, or if you have options, and Mumbai Indians have had options in the past as well. So not to kind of give him his quota of 4. But, as Bish mentioned, what I really like about him is temperament, irrespective of what the situation is, how many he's gone for in the previous overs. You give the ball to him, he'll come and bowl for you. So I think that is one thing that's a big advantage. And also the fact that, listen, I mean, everyone's rusty. You've got to give them a little more opportunity, a little more game time. And, someone like Krunal, what I really, as I mentioned before, he's extremely smart. He has that street smartness to try and, I mean, he can find a way out. You put him in a tight position, he has that ability to find his way out of it. And, I mean, that's something I believe even MI and Rohit appreciate about him.
Bish, I know we're saying everyone's rusty, but sometimes are there certain positions in the T20 team that end up being more rusty than others? Krunal Pandya is now your number 6, 7 type batsman. He gets very few balls to play more often than not, and he may or may not always bowl. He goes through a lot of games without significant impact with either bat or ball, and then sometimes when he's called up, he has to perform because it'll invariably be with the side under pressure in whatever way. Is that perhaps the hardest position to be in? Someone who's not guaranteed either a hit very often or 4 overs very often.
It is tough. I don't know whether it's the hardest, but it's a very difficult job in that you come into T20s and generally there's no place to try to work yourself into the contest. And much more so if you're batting at the back end of the innings, you have to come in and try to make an impact straight away, or you're called on with the ball to try to make an impact straight away. The other thing with Krunal Pandya is that he can do something special for you in the field, and his enthusiasm knows no boundaries. So I think with Pollard, who has wanted to bowl more for Mumbai Indians, he's wanted to. He's not been allowed to bowl much in the last 2 or 3 seasons. I think that would have disappointed him. Rohit has that fallback. So I think that can sort of, even though Hardik isn't bowling at the moment, I think it's something of a little relief and a little release of pressure on Krunal Pandya. I think if Pandya doesn't perform in one area of the game, he's got a couple more other options to fall back on fielding or batting.
Yeah, fair enough. Kieron Pollard, the bowling option, was used last game, and effectively so. 3 overs by the big West Indian in the last one. So you could count on him to bowl if Hardik Pandya continues to play just as a batsman. But let's have the other big talking point now that RCB are batting first. We've already spent enough time on other shows, Deep, but let's resume the conversation of where should Virat Kohli bat, because we believe that his greatest impact statistically has been opening. But you've gone and bought an Aaron Finch, and Devdutt Padikkal has had a significant score. So should RCB change things just yet?
Well, I'm sure Bish won't be happy to hear this. I know Bish wants him to open, but I'd say Virat at 3, because Finch has been so successful opening the innings. Padikkal, obviously, we all know what he can do, and he's shown it in the first game as well. I just think Virat at 3 for me gives me more strength in terms of, I know that Virat's come in at 3. It also gives someone like Devdutt Padikkal or Aaron Finch a little more freedom maybe at the top. But listen, again, it's just a couple of games. I think Virat will obviously find his form and the runs. It's just a matter of time. But I would prefer Virat at 3. And the way Virat has played in T20 in the last couple of years, I mean, he's even batting at number 4, he was absolutely brilliant. So I think he's more flexible that way as compared to, let's say, a Finch. I know Bish did mention, I think in the pre-match, the review, that Finch at 3. But I think, someone like Virat is more flexible in terms of his batting position as compared to, let's say, someone like Finch.
It's that old conversation, Bish. What's best for Virat Kohli versus what's best for the team. But is what's best for the team also what's best for Virat Kohli?
Well, if as we go along this season and Deep proves to be absolutely right, I will be the first one to congratulate him and to hold my hands up and say, Deep, you're right again. But in this case, I love how you phrased it. Whatever is good for Virat Kohli is good for this RCB team because he, along with AB, they are the two linchpins, the central figures in any success that RCB are going to have. The other guys around them, the Jahels, the Isuru Udanas, even Aaron Finch, the support guys with roles that are sometimes bigger than the others. So I'm still going to say I think Virat can win you a game off his own bat right at the very top. But hey, they're seeing it differently. So let's see how it plays out.
What about please?
Question to Bish, yeah. Bish, if you look at the opposition bowling as well, I'm not. I mean, and the way Virat's been batting or whatever, he hasn't had too much game time. With Pattinson, Bolt, and maybe Bumrah and over there, do you still want to get Virat to open, or just say, you know what, at 3, that's where you batted all your life or whatever? How would you go about it?
Excellent question. My best players are going to face the most deliveries for me in any game, and if I have to be wary of Virat, who's one of the best batsmen in the game, being wary of being dismissed by Pattinson or Trent Bolt or Jasprit Bumrah, then I think I'm thinking a little bit negatively. So I'm going to back my best player to get through that and set himself up.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, Deep. It was going to be the next point of conversation. Trent Bolt has a great record against Aaron Finch. Can you do a horses for courses? Say this is one of the few bowling attacks in the IPL with 2 international world-class new ball bowlers and Bumrah to follow. Would this be a day perhaps to send Virat Kohli up? Maybe you can go back to Finch and Padikkal for other games. But would you change your mind? Because I know where Bish stands, but would you
No, I won't. I'll be honest. I mean, I'm a big advocate of flexibility in T20 cricket batting lineup, but I won't touch the openers. I think openers are a very specialized job, irrespective which format you're playing. I will not be playing around with the opening pair too much, is how I see it. And I also understand why Finch would have an issue with anyone who gets the ball back into him, because he's a very beside the ball player. So obviously when the ball comes back into him, there is a chance of that gap between bat and pad. And so, yeah, I mean, anyone who gets the ball back into him has got him into trouble a few times.
All right. Well, we don't need to discuss this any further because Aaron Finch and Devdutt Padikkal have already taken guard at Dubai. So we will keep this. Anyway, Bish doesn't have you over for those parties that he does in the same hotel. It doesn't matter if you disagree with him. Bish is a bigger man than that. Let's pick up this conversation at halftime. Ian Bishop, Deep Das Gupta, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. We'll see how RCB go and what's a big 20 overs for them. Lots of changes made in the team. They'll need some runs for this new look bowling attack to defend. So we'll see how many they get. Join us then for our mid-inning show on Whirlpool Presents ESPN Cricket Info T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. Bye-bye.